Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you for those who chose to sit up front. Really appreciate that. Well, I wanted to welcome you to one of what I'm hoping is the first of many of these events. This is the first time we are doing this, and we didn't know what to expect, so you showing up is invaluable. How did this opportunity come before us? Speaking to our businesses, our community leaders, and our first responders, I started to see a trend and kind of a thread of, one, do we really know who we all are in the community? Do we know who to call if an event happens, and then what to expect after that call is done? So I met with Craig Walk of the Gettysburg Fire Department, and he has been beyond gracious with not just giving us this opportunity for this space, but really helping walk through and create and design today. So with everyone here, they're going to stand up one at a time. I will introduce them prior, so you know who they are and what they do. And they'll give about a 30-minute or so presentation. Everything we're going to do here today is pretty high level, but they are very importantly going to speak about how to be certified later, where to go to get the detailed information you need, and then of course Destination Gettysburg will be sending out surveys and future opportunities for those certifications, because we definitely know that's important. As you guys know, Gettysburg was recently voted the most welcoming small town in America by visitors. So with that, I thought it would be a great idea 1 week prior to our tourism to prepare us and make us not only the most welcoming small town in America, but also the most prepared for our visitors and our locals and our businesses. And we have the right people here today to help make that happen. So in respect of time, we're going to get through this, but I know we did say we would end at 2 p.m. After the event at 2 p.m. If anybody wants to stay, we're going to do some EMS demonstrations. They will talk about that, and some fire safety demonstrations outside. So I first want to bring up Carl Peterzak of Destination Gettysburg. He's the president and CEO, to give a quick little comment about today and introduce and say hello to a few people in the crowd.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. It's great to see. I see a lot of partners here today and a lot of familiar faces and a few new ones. So I appreciate everybody being here. I want to thank Amy and Magdalena for this great idea and for putting this session together today. We are heading right into our busiest time of year. May is kicking off, the early summer season for visitation here in Gettysburg. And as the folks who welcome our guests and serve them and help provide the experiences that they love and why they keep coming back, you're also the folks that are potentially going to be there if something happens to a guest, they get sick, or somebody has an accident. And it's wonderful that we'll have some more information on how to really help our visitors in case that happens and who to reach out to. So I also would like to thank our fire and police, EMS, Park Service partners for being here today to share some of their knowledge with us. And then also recognize, I see some elected officials and representatives here today. So Patty Lawson and Judy Butterfield with Gettysburg Borough Council, thank you for being here. And I see Raphael and Melissa with Senator Doug Mastriano's office. Great to see you guys here today, thank you. And then it's my pleasure to introduce to you our mayor, Rita Freeling, who's with us and helped kick us off today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm so glad to see everybody here. I just think this is a wonderful opportunity, and I talked with Craig Walk of the Gettysburg Fire Department, and he said he worked with Amy Walsh to get this idea together, and I hope it's something that we can continue to do, Amy Walsh of Destination Gettysburg. I'm very honored to be here, and as we said, Gettysburg is the most welcoming small town. We were also voted the most romantic small town in Pennsylvania, one of the most romantic places. But let's go for the gold and get recognition for being the most prepared, because it helps our residents, our businesses, our employees who work in those businesses, and our visitors. So thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
Thank you so much. So we've talked a lot about Craig Walk, so I'm going to bring him up from the Gettysburg Fire Department. and he will be introducing the individuals that he's with and kick off this event. Thanks so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Everybody hear me? Boo. I haven't started talking yet. So me and Amy's relationship started kind of awkward. I was coming out of the fire station one day and saw...
All my relationships start.
Right. So I saw a lady peering in the window, and usually when that happens, it's somebody wanting us to come out and save their cat from either a tree or under their basement or something to that effect. But no, it definitely turned into something obviously much bigger and much greater than I'd ever expected. So when she explained the idea to me, I definitely thought it was something that could connect us, the public service sector, with the community on a much different level, and could kick off not only this event, but as I was talking with Mayor, future events to come. And we're happy to provide not only the public service on a day-to-day basis, but events like this, and then future trainings to come. So, but with me, without further ado, I have two experts, I would say, in the fire service. They may laugh at that, but former chief, and you can raise your hand if you would please, Ed Mazenko, former chief of Gettysburg Fire Department, and also a Washington, D.C. firefighter. And next to him, to his left, is Joey Tamarantz of the Arlington Fire Department, also a deputy chief of the Gettysburg Fire Department. These two gentlemen, since I've been here in my short period of time, I have about 25 years of service in the volunteer fire service and EMS world. And in the short period of time that I've been here, these guys, since they've been back, just a wealth of knowledge. So I've invited them here today in hopes of, they've been around the borough and they've seen the different businesses. So I want them to just chime in on their 2 cents and what they've seen with the different businesses, what we can do better, what we can collaborate on, whether that be walkthroughs, emergency preparedness plans, and anything that we can do as a team to prepare for those emergency situations that are just completely unexpected. So with my presentation in your bag, I prepared a couple of handouts. One of those, if you'll dig into those for me, please. I know usually people save those to the end and we'll look through them, but there's a couple of handouts in there. And one of them is a workplace inspection checklist. Certainly not everything, nope. It is the big packet, the large packet, staple packet. Certainly not everything is in there is going to be applicable to every business in here. But it is a baseline template that can be built off of, and I would be happy to work with any business in this room on kind of tailoring that template more toward your specific business or your specific goals within your organization. The second is a workplace inspection, a fire extinguisher pass acronym card. That's just more of a reminder card. Amy's holding that up here, and that stands for pull, aim, squeeze, sweep. And we'll be demonstrating that a little bit later out back, and that is also included in one of our instructional videos up here that I'll be presenting today. And then the next, which Amy had out originally, is a workplace fire safety handout. And I've added some resources to the back of this. And this is one that I actually want to touch on pretty in depth, especially with the business owners out here. This is probably the best, I would say, as far as the information that is contained in it and the resources that are available as far as the additional training on the back of the handout, the best information that you can get. So every year, it says in the United States, if you'll pull that out, there's 16,500 office and store fires that cause about $932 million in property damage. So there are some tips on there. I know for some, even myself, it can be a little bit hard to read, but for employees, eliminating fire hazards, check for damage or overloaded electrical outlets, cords and cables. I know from working in an office environment, some of my distribution centers that I've ran in the past, they'll have surge protectors plugged into surge protectors into surge protectors. Just not good business practice. Keep anything that can burn away from electrical equipment, obviously. Never leave anything portable as far as heating devices unattended. And then employers, this is a big part of it that often goes overlooked. Need to make sure that your smoke alarms, your sprinkler systems are properly installed and your fire alarm systems are properly serviced and serviced on a regular basis. We get called out to a lot of automatic fire alarms. We've been to several businesses 3-4 times in 1 week just because of an improperly serviced fire alarm system. And, after the third or fourth call, we go through the same steps as if it were a real emergency. We do a 360-degree sweep. We're checking with the business owners if they're on site, so we go through the same practices. But this is a big one, especially for you and your employees. Escape routes and evacuation plans. And I don't think this is practiced enough throughout the country, throughout Gettysburg, all around, especially with like onboarding new employees. I think there needs to be clear escape plans posted, and when you do onboard new employees, especially like when you're doing seasonal employees, summer employees, it needs to really be a part of that orientation process, and they really need to understand that, in the event of an emergency, a lot of businesses in Gettysburg, especially downtown Gettysburg, are in close quarters, let's be honest. So there's not a whole lot of space once you get through, what's actually in the business, the storage rooms or the storerooms, so you need to have a clear plan of escape. And a lot of businesses also have several additions built on the back of them. They'll have apartments attached to them. So a clear escape route is very important. And I will say that as a fire department, we are more than willing to help work with you. We will obviously not design them for you, but we are more than willing to work with you on those plans and give our input as far as best practices for your particular business. And Amy does have my contact information, and I will make that readily available. We do not have business card specific with my contact information on it, but we'll make that information available so that if you would like us to do a walkthrough of your facility or an assessment, we will make that available to you. Teach employees about the exit locations. I did cover that, and escape routes and fire protection equipment. All of your employees should know how to use a fire extinguisher. And again, we will cover that in the videos later to come. If there is a fire, very obvious, call 911. If there is a light smoke condition, if there is anything that you have a doubt on, a spark in an electrical outlet, call 911. I think a lot of people are afraid to call 911, thinking that I can give you a scenario of a business that we just ran out to. They just turned their air conditioning units on for the first time. They were some older units. They got a light smoke condition in the building. They did the right thing, called 911. We come out, assessed the situation. It turned out that the units had not been serviced properly. We ensured that the conditions were safe and it was just some runoff, and cleared the building and got the occupants back inside, and they were able to resume business operations, and their maintenance technicians were able to take care of the problem. So never use the elevator. Walk down the stairs in the event of a fire. Any businesses, and this is one thing, any businesses that do have an elevator, we see this a lot where businesses will upgrade elevators and do not have elevator keys, external elevator keys for the fire department. Generally, we have keys on our master key ring that will open the elevator should somebody become trapped in there. But it's always important that if you do any type of upgrade to your elevator, that you have a key at your front desk if you are a business that has an elevator, mostly applicable obviously to hotels and things of that nature. So, and then if you can't evacuate, obviously remain calm, seal the door gaps with jackets and around the windows, and again, remain calm. But the big thing is, like I said, when in doubt, call 911. There is also, and I'm sure the 911 center will talk about this as well, but there is also a non-emergency number for those times when, when you have a situation where you don't quite qualify it as an emergency, but you also want to take action on it as well. On the back of the handout, employees should plan and practice escape routes in case one exit is blocked, and remove any obstacles from the exit. We go into a lot of buildings, especially in downtown, a lot of basements where there's storage material stacked up to the ceiling. It makes it very difficult to navigate through and actually do a thorough inspection to kind of narrow down where the problem may be within the structure. So again, that's where we come into play, and would be happy to again assist you as a business and come out, one of us come out and actually do a walkthrough and make suggestions for improvements on how how we can help you with your business and maybe reorganizing to make it a little bit more clean. So you'll notice down below I've posted some online training resources. I will preface that with, these are all free online training resources offered by the American Red Cross. These include classes such as first aid CPR, adult first aid CPR, bloodborne pathogen training, anaphylaxis and epinephrine, auto injector training, cat and dog first aid. That does exist. It is valuable. I believe Adams Regional, you guys actually have kits to resuscitate cats and dogs on their rigs as well. First aid for opioid overdoses, AED training, and there's a slew of other trainings. There's fast training for severe trauma, but if you go on American Red Cross training, I just listed a few. There is training beyond belief that they offer for free, and then there are some paid courses as well. If there is anything specific to your business that you have questions on, that you guys would like training on, please feel free to reach out to us as a fire department. If I can't get you information on it, I will at least be able to point you in the right direction. Also, workplace safety, specific to workplace safety, there's a website called allison.com, and that also is all free online training. And the classes that are on the American Red Cross are certification grade classes. The ones on Allison, there's a mixture of certification, non-certification grade courses, but all good information to have. And then other suggested training resources you'll see there below, such as Active Shooter, which is just a resource there. And then should you not choose to go through that training, you can also contact your law enforcement agency or Pennsylvania State Police to provide that type of training to your employees as well. So moving on to the actual videos, we go through a couple different videos here. A fire safety presentation, just going over workplace fires, different flammable liquids and combustibles, poor housekeeping, and then some emergency action plans on the second video. And then our last video will finish up with fire extinguisher videos. One includes basic demonstration, and then one is a more specific extinguisher use video. So can everybody see the screen up there, see my rocks? Okay. And by all means, this training is, again, just scratching the surface for what we're going to be able to do for you guys in the community. by all means, reach out to Amy. Once I provide my contact information, she puts it out to you guys. You can reach out to me personally or any of us at the fire department. And, also at the end, any questions and answers that have not been provided or anything that you may have a question about the fire service, and I'm sure the EMS would agree as well. Please save that for the Q&A session at the end.
According to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, otherwise known as OSHA, over 200 fires occur in the United States workplace every day. And each year, workplace fires and explosions kill 200 people and injure more than 5,000. Do you know the best way to keep from getting injured in a workplace fire? It's easy. Don't have one. And obviously, preventing a fire is the best way to stay safe. An employer must inform employees upon initial assignment to a job of the fire hazards to which they're exposed. And in addition to that, employees should receive training in basic fire safety and what to do to prevent and escape a fire. In this workplace fire safety training, we'll give you the knowledge to protect yourself and others from potential fire hazards. There are so many ways for workplace fires to start. There's electricity, there's chemicals, flammable liquids, combustible materials, compressed gases, smoking, and even poor housekeeping. Let's talk about electrical hazards for a minute. They're the leading cause of workplace fires. And the following guidelines can help you prevent a dangerous situation. Make sure the cords and plugs are in good condition before using electrical equipment. Cords with worn-out wires need to be replaced. Make sure you avoid running cords or wires on fits or near a heat source. And be sure to keep the cords out of doorways where they can become worn. Don't overload electrical circuits. Now imagine you only have one outlet with 4 plugs at your office desk. In that one outlet, you need to plug in your computer, a monitor, a printer, and a phone charger. Maybe even a light or a tablet charger, a second monitor, a fan, etc. Simply adding plug extenders or multiple outlet extension cords is dangerous. And the best way to prevent electrical overloading and fires because of that overloading is to use a surge protector or a multiple outlet power strip that's really actually designed for that kind of load. Now, chemicals can pose a variety of risks. Read the labels in the NSDSs or safety data sheets for the fire hazards related to the chemicals you use. Specific handling requirements and training must be provided by your employer for hazardous chemicals. Now remember, it's vital to store chemicals properly and in tightly closed containers. Keep flammable and combustible materials away from ignition sources. Flammable liquids are those that can produce vapors at low temperatures. The vapors can ignite quickly, causing fires or explosions. Liquids labeled as combustible can produce vapors at higher temperatures. Combustible materials are items that can burn and act as a fuel in a fire. These include items such as paper, wood, or plastic. An example of a common dangerous workplace situation is storing paint thinner or fuel cans near a gas water heater or a furnace. This can be easily corrected by moving the items. Be sure to obey your smoking rules and no smoking signs. Extinguish cigarettes and matches completely in special designated containers. Now keep your workplace area free of clutter and combustible scrap materials and other debris. Clutter contributes to fires by providing that fuel we talked about and by preventing access to exits and emergency equipment that may be needed in case of a fire. Arson is another common cause of workplace fires, and it's important to help maintain building security to prevent these arson fires. Lock up as instructed, report suspicious persons, and don't leave combustible rubbish where it can be set fire outside the building. In general, if you see a dangerous situation, correct it. Supervisors are not the only ones responsible for preventing workplace fires. Preventing fires is everybody's responsibility. And if you see a fire hazard that you can't correct yourself, report it to a supervisor immediately. No matter what type of workplace you're in, potentially unsafe conditions can be anticipated. However, unsafe conditions can be corrected or properly controlled, and accidents can be prevented.
All right, next video covers emergency action plans. It's a big part, especially here in Gettysburg, big part of what we need to cover.
An emergency action plan is simply a well-thought-out plan of what to do if a fire occurs. The key components include methods of notifying people of a fire, such as alarms or a plan for getting out of the building safely, and means for containing or controlling a fire. The plan must take into consideration the unique features of each individual building and its occupants. Depending upon the type of hazards, size of the building, and the number of employees, an employer may or may not be required to create an emergency action plan. If a plan is required, it should be kept current, updated as needed. It is the employer's responsibility to communicate the plan to the employees. This plan needs to be in writing and be easily accessible to all employees. Now, when a fire emergency occurs, three things should happen. An alarm system needs to alert others in the building to begin evacuation. 911 should be called as quickly as possible, even if your alarm system is monitored, and doors should be closed behind you as you evacuate. This can help prevent the fire from spreading to other rooms or parts of the building. Now, when a fire alarm sounds, what should you do? It's important to treat every fire alarm as though it's a real emergency, even if the initial source is unknown. And if the alarm sounds or a fire is suspected, call the fire department immediately. After calling the fire department, if you determine that there is no fire or it is a malfunction of your equipment, call 911 and relay this information to them. Never wait to investigate the situation before notifying the fire department. Any delay will allow a fire to grow and further endanger the building, its occupants, and the property. According to the National Fire Protection Association, fire alarms that malfunction often get disabled because they cause costly interruptions for employers and are viewed as a nuisance. Employers must ensure that all alarms are activated, in working order, and have a battery backup. When a fire alarm sounds, where should you go? OSHA requires that all workplaces have an adequate exit and unobstructed escape route in case of a fire. The number of exits required for all employees to exit safely depends on several factors, including whether the facility uses substances that are at a high risk for combustion, the layout of the building, and the type of the construction materials used. National fire safety standards and local fire codes will determine the types and number of exits required. Remember, fire escape routes must be a permanent part of the building and clearly marked with signs posted. Since emergency exits are areas not often used, they have a tendency to become an easy area for storage, access boxes, you name it. Make sure this doesn't happen in the workplace and keep all exit routes clear. In case of a fire, you won't want that door blocked, and you'll be glad you did keep it clear. So even though it may not be required by fire codes in your workplace, holding a fire drill occasionally is a great idea to practice your escape routes. The best way to protect yourself and others in your workplace is to be prepared. Become familiar with your facility's fire safety systems. You should know the building escape routes, learn the location and how to use manual pole alarms, and fire extinguishers that are on the walls or setting in certain specific areas should really be known how to be used. You know, the fire doors and the emergency exits are all there to help contain the fire and get you to a place of safety. Be sure you know where they're at. Be sure they open and are clearly marked.
All right, and our last video will cover fire fire extinguisher usage rather, and we will have a demonstration out back after everything concludes today.
When was the last time you had to use a fire extinguisher? For most of us, fire extinguishers are one of those things we like to have around, but ideally would never use. Hi, I'm Rachel with Ally Safety. In this video, we're going to cover some quick tips on fire extinguisher use. It's going to include the types of fire extinguishers, when to fight a fire and when to evacuate, and lastly, how to use a fire extinguisher. I know your time is valuable, so without further ado, let's jump right into it. To understand how to extinguish fires, you first have to understand the fire triangle. For a fire to exist, there has to be 3 elements in place. Those elements are oxygen, heat, and fuel. Fire extinguishers are designed based on the type of fuel that may need to be extinguished. Using the wrong type of extinguisher can actually just make a fire worse. You have to know the type of fuel that you're going to need to extinguish to choose the right extinguisher. How fire extinguishers are designed to work is to remove just one side of the fire triangle. For example, a lot of fire extinguishers are powder extinguishers. What they do is suffocate the fire with powder, removing the oxygen. A water extinguisher will remove the heat from the fire. Remove one side of the triangle and extinguish the fire. The classes of extinguisher that you need to know are A, B, C, D, and K. Class A fire extinguishers are for ordinary combustibles, things like wood, paper, and cardboard. Class B fire extinguishers are for flammable liquids like diesel, oil, and gas. Class C fire extinguishers are for energized electrical equipment. Class D fire extinguishers are for combustible metals. Those are things like sodium, potassium, and magnesium. Class K fire extinguishers are easy to remember. Think of the K as standing for kitchen. They're designed to put out fires in things like deep fryers. Now, one thing to know about fire extinguishers is some are specific to just one type of fuel. For example, it may be simply a type A extinguisher or type K, but most can extinguish more than one type of fuel. This is an ABC fire extinguisher. This is actually the most common out there. How it works is it uses a dry powder to smother the fire. Portable fire extinguishers are built to extinguish fires that are in the incipient phase. This is the phase that comes soon after ignition, before the fire has really generated a lot of heat. A fire in this phase is roughly the size of an office trash can. Now, you don't want to extinguish fires that have gone to the next phase, which is the growth phase. In the growth phase, the fire starts to generate heat and grows rapidly. A fire extinguisher isn't designed to extinguish a fire that large. Most fire extinguishers only have enough extinguishing agent to last about 30 seconds. In the event of a fire, always make the decision that your safety is your priority and never put yourself in the position where the fire is blocking you from the exit. Only fight the fire if you feel comfortable and safe doing so. Now, to fight a fire using a fire extinguisher, remember the PASS method. That's P-A-S-S. Hold a pin, aim the nozzle at the base of the flame, squeeze the trigger, and sweep the base of the flames from side to side. Once the fire is out, it's not uncommon for the fire to reignite a few minutes later. So make sure that you're keeping watch until you're certain that it's out and done. Okay, so now you know the basics of fire extinguisher use. Make sure to check that you have the right extinguisher for the type of fuel available. Also, check the fire extinguishers to make sure that they're properly charged and ready to go in case they're ever needed. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, I'll see you later.
All right. That concludes the content, video content of my presentation. I did want to open it up for 2 to 3 minutes just for Ed and Joey being chief and deputy in the borough, just to call out any challenges that you guys have encountered or seen with the local businesses in the area and over the past several years, and maybe things that we can do to mitigate risks moving forward. Just a few minutes here to close out.
Good afternoon. Ben Mazengo, past fire chief, Gettysburg Fire Department, 32 years of fire service. I'm also state fire instructor. And as Craig said, I'm a career firefighter, actually an officer down in the District of Columbia. So a couple different things here, being about a past fire chief in the borough here in Gettysburg, is one thing that's very old. It's historic. Okay, so there's a lot of things with the new fire codes or whatever that a lot of these older buildings aren't up to code. So some of the things that we used to run into is obviously building construction. It's an older type building, heavy frame, it's cut up in different places, old knob and tube wiring, if somebody's not familiar with that, old fuses. So a lot of the stuff usually isn't changed because obviously it costs money. So obviously as upgrades go, then you're going to have to change that over. So that is very, unique to us. Some of the other things too is that we like to discuss is with the age of the building and the tightness of the street, leaving area for us to get in. Okay, going back to just jumping around here a little bit, has anybody here ever heard of the Knox box? Okay, who has those on their businesses? Who does not have them on their business? Okay, it's called Knox, K-N-O-X. Okay, it's a secure box that you will get as a key for your business, and only us, for the Gettysburg Fire Department, has a master key for that box. So that you get put somewhere, usually at an entranceway or where maybe your fire control room is, if you have one of those. The box comes unlocked, you get it professionally mounted in a secure area. You will then call us. To actually store those keys in the box, because we only have the key to lock that box. So what the Knox box does is, if you have an alarm, usually after hours, we get the alarm for your building and stuff like that, we're able to access that box and get inside your building. We do carry a master key, but that usually does a lot of damage to your door. All right, there isn't a building that we haven't been able to get to yet. Okay, so how do you want us to get in? A lot of times fire alarms go off for multiple reasons. Batteries go, dust in the system, whatever it may be, an electrical short. So by having that Knox box allows us to get in without doing any damage to your building. Then, if anybody here has ever bought a building off of somebody else and that box is located on your building, please give us a call to check that, because different owners, we've run into situations where past owners of those buildings had their keys in that box. We come open it up, they don't work. So it has to be changed over and over with different ownership. But not to go up, I mean, obviously Craig covered a lot of stuff. I mean, this is just literally a scratch of the surface. The biggest thing, like I said, is 911. Call us anytime, any time of day. When you're unsure about something, call us. Make sure your building is well marked with your address. Okay, that's the biggest thing is, and please don't go out and buy the 1-inch letters, like, 1, 2, 3 is your address. My eyesight at 47 years old is pretty terrible. So trying to find it at night, please don't be afraid to label the front of your building. And I think it's a borough ordinance that the back of the building also has to be numbered. All right, so that's the biggest thing. And teach your employees what your address is. Okay, how many people have gone into buildings before and never known the address? Okay, so if you got new employees and stuff like that, teach them your address. All right, so if they got to pick up the call, the 911 center has what they call the Annie Alley, which is the automatic number identification, automatic location. But a lot of times, a lot of calls, we always pick up. Who's got one of these? Okay, pretty much everybody in here, right? So a lot of thing is to know where you are actually at. Okay, the county can somewhat pinpoint a good location for where you are, but if anybody has businesses that travel, like the scooter businesses, anybody here have a scooter business or the old antique cars or whatever? So you're not generally just at your business, right? You're outside going, traveling up and down the street. Take notice to where you're at from time to time. So if somebody falls off their scooter, gets hurt or gets injured, or you come across something, pick up the phone, that way you have an idea of where you're at. And then the last thing I'm gonna hit really quick, and then I'll give it over to Joey, is we see it all over now, it's becoming a big deal, are EV batteries, stuff like that. If you have those in your building, okay, make sure they're in a secure location. Do not put them by your exits, do not put them by any type of doors. Make sure you are using the approved chargers for those batteries. Aftermarket batteries are cheaper, okay, and we all like to save money. Everything's expensive today, correct? But if you're using an aftermarket battery in your device, you run a 90% chance or greater of causing a fire. Okay. Just look at the news. New York City is running roughly about 20 EV fires every day in New York City. We're starting to see them down in the district quite a bit. Here in Gettysburg, they're starting with the Segways, the EV cars, stuff like that. They're starting to come, we're going to start seeing more and more and more. If you're not using the appropriate battery or the chargers, okay, or if they're damaged, get them, dispose of them properly. Okay, don't put them somewhere. That way we don't have to see you on an unfriendly note. So, if you have any questions later on, I'm going to give it to my past deputy chief, Joey Tamaras. And
I have a quick question.
yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
What is dispose of them properly? What does that
So
mean?
every EV battery and stuff like that will actually have a code on it. It's actually a little circle. It'll say for battery recycling. Okay, every battery out there pretty much today will have it on. I think might even have one on my truck still. Okay, I'll go look at it. It'll say call this number and stuff like that, and it'll actually tell you a disposal place. I know nobody here from the Gettysburg Bike Shop, is there? Okay. I know the Gettysburg Bike Shop here off of York Street is able to take smaller batteries, according to the website. All right, I've never physically gone in there. I never had to drop one off. All right, but every battery out there today, and like I said, I'll go pull one of our batteries and stuff like that, but it has a sticker, call this number, and I think there's even a website, boom, and it's no charge. Okay, so that's the other thing. Don't leave them laying around. And everybody has pretty much a lithium-ion battery in their pocket right now. Who has an iPhone? And I'm not a phone, stuff like that. Who's ever charged it and felt it get hot? Okay, you are starting to create a thermal runaway with your phone. Okay, the electronics inside of it are supposed to stop it to a certain point to let it cool down. But if it gets hot and hot and hot, okay, there was a kid that we ran roughly about 3 weeks ago. They were doing something with their phone down in the district, and the phone exploded on his, while he was holding it up to his face. Literally just exploded. He did nothing wrong, but the phone went to, whether it be dropped or whatever, he finished charging it. And when we start running different applications on our phone, you feel the thing heat up, right? And when I had up onto his face, it went in firmer runway and blew up on him. So, a lot of stuff. So, but give it to Joey, and I'll see about I'll get that information for you real quick, okay?
Joey,
We're good.
we're just gonna do Q&A at the end, pass it on to the chief. Glenn.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And make sure before you leave, if you do have a business, you want that complimentary walkthrough, get with Craig. He'll give you his email, phone number, so you guys can contact for that. Also to Destination Gettysburg, we'll be sending out an email comprehensive based on today with all the different links and people you should reach out to. And the next person is from Gettysburg Police Department. We have Chief Glenny, so give him your full attention.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being here to listen. Before I get started on this fantastic PowerPoint that I threw together yesterday, and I'm certainly not an expert in making PowerPoints, so I'll apologize ahead of time. How's that? I'd like to introduce two of our officers in the back. We have Sergeant Pruitt and Officer Clunk. They are our bike patrol. You will see them around town, around your businesses, around your neighborhoods. They brought the bikes today if you want to take a look at them. And I just wanted them to be here so you could thank them and see their bikes and see who you'll be seeing out there on the bicycle patrol. And you should see some guys on foot. And then we also have a mounted patrol, which we use less frequently, but we do use it. I'd also like to say before I jump into the PowerPoint that this week is National Police Week, Police Memorial Week, and there's a celebration going on down in DC right now for those who have fallen. I would just like to take 1 second to say a quick moment of silence for their service and those folks and their families. Thank you. Thank you very much. So again, I threw this PowerPoint together pretty quick. I was asked to talk about a few things. So first thing I thought we'd start with is pedestrian safety. The question posed was, is jaywalking illegal? And if you Google is jaywalking illegal, you're going to find that per se it's not illegal because you won't see the term jaywalking anywhere. But I've listed a few things up here that are actually illegal in Pennsylvania. And rights and obligations of pedestrians. And we've all heard, well, the pedestrians always have right of way in the crosswalk. That's true if they're lawfully in the crosswalk. So they have to be in that crosswalk before they get the right of way. And I listed a lot of things up here. A couple things I'll touch on. I'm not going to talk about all of them. Use of sidewalks. The vehicle code says if there's a sidewalk in place, it must be used. So people can't walk or run on the road. They have to use the sidewalk. If there is no sidewalk and people are walking along the roadway, they have to walk against the direction of traffic as far off the roadway as they can. So we'd often see, I hate to pick on people that jog, but sometimes I'll see joggers jogging on the sidewalk with the direction of traffic actually in the edge of the travel lane. That is actually not lawful. So if there's a sidewalk there, they have to use it, and they have to stay on the berm or as far to the edge of the road as they can get and walk against traffic. One of the biggest things we'll see in Gettysburg proper, and you'll see as you're working, is people that park their cars along the street. They'll get out of the car, shut the door, turn, and cross the street right there where they parked the car and not use a crosswalk. That is, again, against the vehicle code. I mean, there is a fine. We're not going to go out and we're not looking for that a lot. But what I want folks to realize is that you lose any protections you may have had as a pedestrian at that point. The law is not on your side when you park your car, jump out, and just go to cross the street. The pedestrian crossing laws had to do with sidewalks. What you're supposed to do is go up the sidewalk, walk down the sidewalk to the crosswalk, and cross at the crosswalk. So when you cross it under the crosswalks, it's a fine. And when I talk about a fine, and I think I have it on the next slide here. Pedestrian violations of the vehicle code are fined at $5. So it's a $5 fine plus court costs. So it's going to still be about $100, but the fine itself is $5. Everything else is all the fees added in. But very rarely do we write these. We do, I will tell you now, we are a recipient of a pedestrian enforcement grant from Pennsylvania, from the Department of Transportation through the Highway Safety Network. And we get a lot of those grant dollars funneled to us for overtime enforcement of pedestrian laws, both for vehicles and pedestrians. And the majority of the violations that we do see, I will say, are vehicle violations against pedestrians. Pedestrians in the crosswalk, they don't yield the right of way, those sorts of things. I wanted to talk about the big fine you see on there is there is a section in the vehicle code for intoxicated pedestrians, and that's a $50 to $100 fine plus court costs. So that's the only one that's really carved out with a fine, is if somebody's intoxicated and they're on the sidewalk or they're a pedestrian, that's a little bit heftier fine. Bicycles and non-motorized scooters. See a lot of them. Bicycles and non-motorized scooters cannot be ridden on the sidewalk in the square and the first blocks of York, Baltimore, Carlisle, and Chambersburg Street. They also cannot be ridden on the sidewalks on Steinway Avenue. That's according to borough ordinance. According to the Pennsylvania State Vehicle Code, they cannot be ridden on the sidewalk in a business district. So anything that's specified as a business district, it's not legal to ride bicycles on the sidewalk. We often see this with little kids and things like that, and that's not what this is written for. It's not the 5-year-old that's riding their bike beside mom and dad. This is written for those folks that are avoiding traffic on the road and riding their bicycle on the sidewalk. Now, the next one down is one that's becoming a very big issue, and that is the motorized scooters or skateboards. They may only be ridden on private property. They are considered a vehicle in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And as a vehicle, they must be licensed, registered, and insured. And there is no mechanism for those things to be licensed, registered, and insured. So they're relegated to private property. That is a little chart that PennDOT puts out that tells you what each type of those vehicles are and what you can and can't do with them and the sections that they violate. And that is online, or I can make a copy of this PowerPoint available to anybody that wants it. The main thing is that I always say when I'm talking about pedestrian safety is if someone's hit by a car, does it really matter at that particular juncture whose fault it is? So I would say, let's everybody be careful, both motorists and pedestrians. Pedestrians don't walk out in front of cars, and motorists watch for those pedestrians, because again, if somebody's hit by a car, there's a lot bigger things to worry about than whose fault that was. So that's pretty much it on pedestrians. I can go into a little more depth later, but I just wanted to touch with it. It is jaywalking is illegal in other manners. It just doesn't call it jaywalking. Any questions on the pedestrian type things?
I have a question.
Yes.
In many communities and crosswalks like we have in the square, there are those signs located within the street, usually on the double yellow line, that warn of a crosswalk.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have those. I just was curious why. I think New Oxford has.
So there's a lot of debate on those signs. There's a recognized phenomenon out there called sign pollution, which means people just don't watch them. Where you get those signs up, and you'll get people that are putting up children to play along the side of the road and those things, and people tend to watch those things and not watch the road where they're going. So that's part of the reason a lot of these things have to be put in place by traffic control studies. There's debate on whether they help or not. So I think that's it. It's not that we wouldn't do it or couldn't do it. It's the fact that are they really worth it? That's my long-winded answer for that one. Yes.
Bicycles, since they, I guess, can now ride on the street, what are the rules of the road for the bicycles?
Bicyclists have to obey every rule the car does. You have to stop at stop signs. You have to stop at red lights. Technically, you have to obey the speed limits. You have to obey minimum speed regulations. Any law a car has to obey that would apply to a bicycle, the bicycle has to obey.
Like I'm sure we see that they often don't. Yeah. Just curious.
Are one wheels considered like an electric skateboard? We're seeing them more and more. And are they?
If they are powered,
Yeah, like even if they were electric plugged in.
yes, you can only use those on private property. So I'm going to move on here a little bit to contacting the police and being a good witness. I want to stress this point because we get a lot of calls of people wanting the police to respond. If you want the police to respond to your business, your home, or wherever you are, you're best to contact the Adams County Emergency Services 911 Center. And Mr. Bladen will speak on this a little bit later, but I wanted to touch on it here. We get a lot of calls right to the station. The station phone number, the Gettysburg Police Department phone number listed in the phone book or online is for administrative or records calls or some type of follow-up thing. It's not for the dispatch of police. So if you call that number looking for the police to come, the only thing that, unfortunately, what's going to happen is you're going to get the police response delayed because we're going to refer you to the non-emergency 911 number, or we'll transfer you there. So please don't call the police station, the 334-1168, if you're calling to report an incident or would like to request the dispatch of an officer. This number is for administrative and record inquiries only. The Dispatch 911 Center is the best and most expedient way to have emergencies and non-emergency public safety services sent to your location or to report crimes or minor incidents. So basically what I'm saying there is they track all the calls, they record all the calls, they document the times of things happening, they dispatch other services that may be needed to be sent. So if let's say we'll use an accident that has a minor injury. for example. That crash, if you call us, we may have an officer on station and they'll start heading down there, but we don't know the extent of other things. So does the fire company need call because there's a cleanup issue? Does an ambulance need to come because there's an injury? All those things. They're the things that Mr. Bladen's crew is trained to recognize when you're talking to them, and they'll pull those things out and they'll get those proper resources en route right away, as opposed to having them delayed because you've called the police station. So we're not going to get mad at you for calling the police. I'm just telling you, the most expedient way to get services there is to call the 911 center, and that number, as you can see on the bottom there, is 717-334-8101. And there is the joke, what's the number for 911? Well, that's the number for 911, so it's the non-emergency number. And I'm sure, as I said, that Mr. Bladen will touch on this more in his presentation, so I'll pretty much let that at that, and maybe I can get this to work. So the next thing I wanted to touch on is being a good witness. And what we're looking for when you're talking about calling us for any type of suspicious activity or crime or just about anything is we're looking to gather the totality of the circumstances, everything that happened. So when you call, we want you to be able to take it all in. So you want to know how many suspects were there? What do they look like? About how tall? What is their build? We don't expect you to say, oh, well, they were, 5'10", 200 pounds, but they were medium height, medium build. That we understand that. What color is their hair? That's an important thing. What color is their hair? What style? How long it is? Was there anything unusual about it? Any identifying features? Do you see any scars, birthmarks, tattoos? Did they have a mask on? What color was the mask? Earrings, glasses, and jewelry. What did it look like? They're all very important things to take in. And again, this is just a totality of the circumstances type thing. Facial hair. If you see that they have facial hair, what type of facial hair? Is it just a mustache? Is it a full beard? Is it a goatee? Is it a big bushy beard? I mean, those things are all important in us identifying it. So clothing, we want a description of the clothing, but everybody needs to realize that's a short-term description. It doesn't actually help us identify the person. It happens to identify the way the person was dressed when you were there, but if we're looking for this person the next day, we can't track them down by their clothing. So it's important, but we want to get, what you want is a basic color and type, anything that stands out on that clothing, like a logo, any wording, is there a picture, is there a team name, something like that. But the clothing description is important, however, it's not as important as the physical characteristics of the person that you're trying to describe to us. So, how tall are they, what's their build, their facial features, their hair, those things are very important because they're not changeable. The person is what the person is. They could go home and change their clothes, but for the most part, they can't go home and completely change their appearance. So we're looking for again, if you've got one of those minds that remember all that stuff, awesome. But you got to kind of prioritize what you can remember. Vehicles. One of the most important things for us to get from a vehicle is that registration license plate. Because if you tell me that it's a white Toyota Corolla, do you know how many white Toyota Corollas are going to be in Gettysburg that day? Every other car. But if you tell me that it's a white car that has Pennsylvania registration ABC 1234, I know what car it was. So if at all possible, you can get that registration for us. The other stuff's important. And again, if you got one of those minds that can remember all that stuff and you're good at it, great. But if you're not, most important thing we could have is the color and the registration. And what's important about a registration as well is the state. Not as important as all the digits, but the state is important. If I have all the digits, I can run it in all 50 states. But if I don't have all the digits, I can't. So the state's important, but the digits are the most important. A big one for us and for a lot of you is camera systems. Good video and photographic evidence is exceptional for us. It oftentimes makes and breaks cases. It's really important to have immediate access by the officer. It's just invaluable in suspect identification for that officer to be able to see that person who you're calling us about. So I want to ask for you to make sure as business owners that all your employees know how to access and download footage. And if all your employees don't, as owners and managers, please make sure your employees have good contact information for somebody who does, especially if they're not allowed to have that full access to the video. But at a minimum, I would ask that you allow them to have playback access so that the officer can go in and go back to your video monitor and see that in real time. We don't necessarily have to have a copy of it right then, but they can go back, they can record that on their phone of it, and then they can get that description or that picture out. It's very important. I cannot reiterate enough how important access to the video in your particular businesses and locations are. Different coverage inside and outside your business is very helpful too. So coverage outside your business of people coming and going. If you have a parking lot, your parking lot, maybe of cars going out of your parking lot. If you have coverage of people coming in your store that gets a face level and coverage of people going out. And we can help you decide or craft a video plan for your store if you'd like. And we're starting up what we call a camera registry, which is more for outside cameras that helps us. One of the main questions or one of the main things we do now when we go to any type of call that's of consequence is we'll look around the neighboring areas for outside cameras, doorbell cameras, things like that. Go talk to folks and see if we can get that footage, because oftentimes we can see suspects and suspicious folks coming and going, or even identify witnesses who may be in the area by looking at that video footage. And so that's really important. And the camera registry that we're starting would just have a registry of, we're still going to walk and look, but it'd be nice to be able to go to that registry and say, hey, this house, this house, this house in this area has cameras, and we might be able to get some footage from that or some evidence from that. So I want to offer back, before we touch on this one, that we also do security assessments of your businesses. So if you want to call the police department, we can probably set you up with somebody to come down, take a look, and do a security assessment of what you have going on. I don't have the time up here today. I know some of the stuff that the fire department gave you in brochures talked about active shooter stuff, and we just really don't have the time to delve into active shooter things today. And I don't want to give you a shortened version of an active shooter scenario type thing, because that could be disastrous if you don't get it all. So the only thing I'll say about active shooters is that they change the terminology often, but it's run away if you can, hide if you can't, and if all else fails, fight. But that's the biggest thing to know is get out of Dodge if you can. So when to call the police? I always say it's the first thing up there. Anytime you think you may need us. I would much rather be there and not be needed than not be there and be needed. If you think something is suspicious, call the police. We're not going to chastise you for calling us. Thank you. We'll come down and look, and you know what? If it's not a police matter, we'll tell you, there's really not much we can do with this, but thank you for calling us. And oftentimes, one of the things that I like to pride myself on is that we're solution finders. We should find a solution for the problem you called us for. And if we can't find that solution, we should be able to help facilitate somebody who can find that solution for you. So maybe it's not us, but maybe we know somebody you can contact. We're forever called for things that ends up being civil matters. We refer folks to attorneys or Keystone Legal or somebody like that, because they're the ones that can settle it. Mental health things, we have a mental health co-responder now who does an awesome job. So we can facilitate solutions to a lot of things. So I can't reiterate enough. If you think you need the police, call us. Worst, we come down and say hello, how you doing? So please use the non-emergency number if the reason you're calling is not emergent. So the non-emergency number for the Gettysburg area is 717-334-8101. I don't know if Mr. Bladen will touch on that or not, but that's the non-emergency number to our dispatch center. If you have a question if the call is serious enough to call 911, call 911. No, don't sit there and bat it around and think, oh, should I call 911 or should I call 911? If you're asking yourself that question, call 911. The worst thing that's going to happen is the dispatcher say, well, next time you have something like this, you can use the non-emergency number. But there's a section for misuse of 911. That's not what that section's for. If you're debating 911, call 911. And then I was asked to touch on retail theft. So retail theft is one of the problems that we see, I won't say frequently, but regularly. And Most thefts from businesses are what's called retail theft. The retail theft has multiple sections, multiple descriptions. The most simplest one is they take it. They take it with intent to deprive the merchant the value of. So that one's fairly easy to spot. They grab it, they leave with it. That's retail theft. There's a couple other ones. Alters, removes, transfers price tags or labels, which helps determine the value purchase. Either purchase needs to be made by oneself or another for the reduced price. So, if somebody's buying a basketball and there's a price tag on it, and they pull a price tag off this basketball and put a price tag off this basketball, it's cheaper on that basketball, bring it up and check out, that's a retail theft violation. They are attempting to deprive the merchant the retail value of that particular basketball by deception here. Removes it from a container. So, if you're buying something small, they remove it from the container, they shove it down in their pocket, they walk out. That's obviously a bunch of different sections, but if they remove it from the container, that's enough for it to be a violation of a retail theft section as well. And then destroys any of the, well, I missed the underrings. If they underring it, that's a violation of retail theft. So if somebody, unfortunately, if there's a worker and they're ringing something out that's below value for a friend or something, that's a violation of the retail theft section. And then there's destroys inventory control tags and anti-theft devices. That's also a violation of the retail theft section. And there's different grading, and I'm not going to go into it. I can tell you if it's a first offense and it's below $150, it's a summary offense for retail theft, which is getting a ticket. Intentionally concealing an item right in the section. So if somebody takes an item, picks it up, and puts it under their coat, that is prima facie evidence, according to the law, that retail theft occurred. In other words, they have just committed retail theft, even if they didn't leave the store. If they pick it up, put it under their coat, that's prima facie evidence that retail theft occurred. That's what I got. I'd be happy to answer any more questions. I was trying to make it quick. I thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Can you go over gun laws? Are people allowed to bring guns into your establishment?
So, a lot of different levels there. So, your establishment's private property. If somebody walks in and they have a gun and you don't want them in there with a gun, you can ask them to leave. It's your property. That makes that a trespass issue. In public, in Pennsylvania, open carry is completely legal. So if somebody's walking with a firearm on their side in plain view, that's legal.
Do they need a
Nope.
license for that?
Nope, they do not.
That's awesome.
They do not need a license to open carry. Now, if they conceal that firearm about their person, they need a license to carry it. So if somebody's open carrying and they put a jacket on and forget they were open carrying or something, and that conceals that firearm, that could be a violation. So open carry is a little tricky, but open carry in and of itself is legal in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The only time you need a permit is to conceal carry. But as far as firearms in your businesses, if you tell a person to leave and they don't leave, it becomes a trespass issue. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's just kind of scary. Like, you're in a position where you have to ask someone with a gun to leave your establishment. That doesn't.
Again, I would say if you think you need the police, call the police, we'll come down. And if you say, hey, we don't want that person in here that has the gun, we'll go tell them for you. I would much rather make you comfortable and do that
Yeah.
than.
I mean, it hasn't happened. It's just.
Sure.
being
I
brought
understand.
up with
I understand.
guns. I was just thinking. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Does that apply to education institutions that are not technically schools?
Educational institutions that aren't technically schools?
Yeah. Like nature centers, playgrounds.
I would have to say if it's truly an educational institution, if it's educational property, then no, that doesn't apply. It's prohibited. But I would have to see the type of facility it is and how that was defined before I could give you a definitive answer on that. But if it's a school, the answer is no. You can't walk in the school.
And if anyone thinks of questions they have at the end, we'll definitely have an opportunity for that as well. And don't forget, I will send a recap with all this great information, links, and resources. Next, not only do we have in-town services, but we have our Gettysburg National Military Park and Eisenhower National Historical Site. We have two great representatives here, Joe Lakowski, who's the Chief of Visitor Services and Resources Protection, as well as Jason Martz, who is the Communication Specialist. So they'll be able to speak on behalf of the National Park Service.
Thank you. I'm not a microphone person. It's going to make life difficult on the TV cameraman as well. So if you can't hear me, please just raise your hand. I'll speak up. Again, I work for the National Park Service. The first thing I want to point out is everybody up here is on the same team. And we all work together on almost everything we do. And I appreciate all the support given to the Park Service. You guys are part of our team as well. And how does that fit into what we do? You are often the first point of contact for a visitor to Gettysburg National Military Park or Eisenhower National Historic Site. They will often come to you asking you questions. So thank you. What I want to do with you is just share some basic information that hopefully you can pass along when you get these questions from these visitors, from people that are planning their vacations to come here. The first thing I want to say is, again, it's been reiterated a whole bunch of times, we're part of the same team. To get emergency services in either park, call 911. It goes to the same dispatch center. We use the same radios, concurrently notifying fire and EMS, but call 911 if it's an emergency. And if it's not an emergency, and you're seeing some of the things that I'm going to discuss later, you can call the same non-emergency number, and the dispatch center always knows how to find a ranger to deal with kind of Park Service specific violations. But there's nothing different about handling emergencies in the park. And depending on what's going on, you might not even see a Park Service person respond to the park if we're tied up. Everybody's on the same team. So some of the most common rules and regulations of the Park Service, also some of the most common questions we get in the park, is kind of what you can and what you cannot do. The parks are set aside to be a place of peace, reverence, solemnity, to commemorate either the Battle of 1863, the Battle of Gettysburg, or Eisenhower's home, depending on which park you're going to. And we preserve the resources, we preserve that peace, we preserve that solemnity. And so some of the things that we prohibit, we ask that visitors do not do, is no drones. Not allowed to use drones anywhere in the National Park Service system, so that's nationwide. Parking, specifically in Gettysburg National Military Park, is a challenge. If you've been there, you understand that. We ask that you park in designated spots, not on the grass, because if we continue to park on the grass, our roads get wider and wider and continue to fall apart. So park in designated spots, designated parking lots. If it is a one-way road, park on the right-hand side of the road with all your wheels on the pavement. Drive on the left, park on the right if it's a one-way road. If it's a two-way road, Wheatfield Road being the biggest example I can think of, you cannot park in the road, right? Because that's obstructing traffic. So think about where you park. Chief Glennie mentioned scooters, skateboards, electric devices in general. Those are prohibited in the park. And so we don't allow skateboards, we don't allow the scooters. If it is a mobility device, that is fine. You know, if you need that, that is your sole source of mobility, that's allowed. But if it's recreational, it's not allowed in the park. Bikes, again, as Chief said, have to follow state traffic law. So you cannot ride your bike against a one-way. And that has always been the case. It just has not been enforced in the past. Now we are trying to enforce that for everybody's safety. If you're on a one-way road and you're a tourist and you're reading monuments and you're looking at the cannons, you're not going to see a bike coming the wrong way against you. So no bikes going against traffic. There's a lot of stuff still on the ground. A lot of stuff happened in July 1, 2, 3 of 1863. So metal detecting, even the possession of a metal detector on Park Service property is prohibited. And by all means, digging is prohibited. And collecting of any resource, whether that be mini shells from the battle, whether that be wildflowers, pieces of wood, rocks, all of that is prohibited. And I'll throw out funny stories. Those of us in this room that are old enough to remember the Brady Bunch, one of the kids collected a rock from somewhere in Hawaii and was haunted for years. We get rocks mailed back to the park all the time that say, hey, I took this from Pickett's Charge, I took this from Culp's Hill, my life has fallen apart since I collected this rock. Please return it. And it's hilarious because then they ask us very specifically, take it to the third fence post on the right-hand side and put it, it's like, okay. So we ask that you spread that word. The Park Service is there to preserve and protect the resources so nothing can be removed from the park. And just in general, we ask for peace and solemnity, treating everybody with respect. All viewpoints come to Gettysburg all the time for all different reasons. We support that, we encourage that, and want everybody to enjoy their visit. So it starts with you when you get these questions, and we appreciate you sharing that. Cannons, monuments are not to be climbed upon. Don't sit your kids up on top of the cannon. Don't sit your kid over the wall of a monument. Certain monuments are designed to be climbed. They have stairs. Pennsylvania Memorial, New York Memorial, they have stairs, they have observation decks. Those are allowed to be climbed upon. Any other monument is not supposed to be climbed upon or used as a playground. Some other questions you might get without going too deep into the weeds of what is required to have a permit in the park. If you are having a large group activity, please contact us about a permit. A permit is a mechanism for us to help manage these events. We have Park Service programming. We know other people that have applied for permits. We try to avoid visitor conflicts. We try to give you the best visitor experience you can have. So if something you think it might possibly require a permit, an organized walk, a birding activity, organized bike rides, large group gatherings, any commercial photography, commercial filming, sorry, contact my office. You can find that on the website. And just ask us questions. We will help set you up for success. That is our goal. If it is a commercial activity, if you are charging people to do something and bringing them into the park, same thing, a permit is required for that. Again, contact us. We will guide you to where you need to go to keep you in compliance and to just, again, regulate, manage so that everybody gets along and we don't have visitor conflicts. The park has licensed battlefield guides, mandated by Congress. We don't have a choice in this matter. If anybody wants to pay for a guided tour of Gettysburg National Military Park, the only person they can pay to give that tour is a licensed battlefield guide. Now, there are a lot of nuances to that rule, but that is the gist of it. So if people are contacting your business and saying, hey, I want to pay my friend to give me a tour of Gettysburg or whatever, I want to pay you to give me a tour of Gettysburg, send them to the visitor center to contact a licensed battlefield guide. Last thing I kind of want to talk about is the National Cemetery. So we are one of 14 national cemeteries managed by the National Park Service. It's quite an honor. It is a great place to reflect, consider what happened. We have very specific regulations for the National Cemetery. And again, of utmost respect in there to honor the soldiers that died in many different wars. And so there's no special events in there unless it is Park Service sponsored. Right, the first one coming up is Memorial Day. We have an event on Memorial Day. But you cannot come in and reenact Gettysburg Address. You cannot come in and give guided tours through there and have different stops. The Park Service offers interpretive tours, licensed battlefield guides in conjunction with the Park Service will offer some tours, and the Park Service will have events. But other than that, the cemetery is a place for quiet reflection, walking through, not attracting attention, and not attracting a big crowd. So the last thing I was going to end was call 911 or the non-emergency number, which has all been covered several times. But that's just, again, the tip of the regulations that you will get, hopefully, questions, be able to answer those, help ensure success in people's visits to this area. So short, sweet, but any questions? He's the man with all the answers. ahead, there you go.
I'm just wondering, I have heard that you can get a permit to drive in the cemetery if you're disabled, is that true?
So yes, it's not an actual permit.
Okay.
If you are disabled, you have a placard or a license plate, stop it.
If it's already have a handicap?
Correct.
Okay.
If you have a handicap plate or a placard that hangs off the mirror, stop in the visitor center, explain, hey, I'm driving a, red Dodge minivan, California plates, when we go to the cemetery. They will radio law enforcement, let us know, because there are no vehicles allowed in the National Cemetery with that exception.
Okay.
So start at the visitor center, but then yes, you can do that.
And there are no bikes and no dogs?
There are no bikes and no dogs except service animals.
Okay.
Just inside each gate to the National Cemetery is a bike rack for that very reason. So you can walk your bike in, lock it on the bike rack, and then continue your walk around.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
It's not an emergency question, but I get this question a lot. When does the park close?
That is an excellent question. I'm going to add that into my list for the future. The easiest answer is the park closes at dark. The technical answer is the park closes half an hour after sunset and opens half an hour before sunrise. If it's dark, the park is closed. And through roads, it's like Wheatfield Road, Tawny Town, Baltimore Pike, those roads that go through the park. Obviously, through traffic, you're allowed to drive through, but you cannot stop. So Wheatfield Road, middle of the night, you can drive through to get home, get to work. You can't stop, get out, and explore.
And that's one of the reasons I get a question, because they're like, well, what if I need to drive through it? I'm like, well, they don't close the road.
Yeah.
You just don't visit the park.
Yeah, correct. So park-specific roads that are not through roads, that are park-only roads, those are technically closed. But Wheatfield Road, buzz right through, just don't stop, don't get out, don't climb on the canyons, all that good stuff.
All right, thank you.
You're off the hook. I know. I expected a million questions for Jason, so. But I appreciate your time. Again, I appreciate you being the point of first contact for almost all of our visitors and sharing our resources.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much. And before we get to the 911 operator, you're the big talk of the day, I'm going to bring up our parking manager for the Borough of Gettysburg, Becca Fissel.
Good afternoon. I'm going to be brief here and just give you some basic information and the answers to some of the most frequently asked questions that I do receive. I did have a little card put in your bag about our app. The meters on the streets and in lots do take coin still, and you can also use the app listed on this card. It is pay by phone. The easiest way to do it is to download the app, or you can do it online. Just make sure you have the correct address listed on there. There are some scams and things out there that if you click on, you could get into a fraudulent site. So the app is the easiest way. All of the locations are on the back of the meters. They're listed in the parking garage. The locations are based on the hourly rates and the max rates of some meters are 3 hours, some meters are 12 hours, and the parking garage is 24 hours. You can pay for multiple days in there as well. So it'll ask you to put your location in, which will then determine how much you're paying, and it'll ask how long you're staying. The 3 hours, it will max you out at 3. If you put in 2 hours, it will let you add an additional hour, but it will not let you add 2 hours because it'll max you out at 3. The meters will still flash expired. The officers know that you're paid because when you enter the information into the app, it does ask for your license plate number. As long as you enter the correct license plate number, that will show up for the officers that you are paid. But the meters do not communicate with the app, so it will still show expired. The parking garage we do have, if you're not familiar with, it is behind the Gettysburg Hotel, directly across the street from here on Racehorse Alley. And that is parking it's charged 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's $1 an hour or $18 for the day. It's a prepay system. So you need to park your car. You go directly to the kiosk. You can pay on the app. There is a permit site you can pay also. But you do need to pay before walking away from the garage. That's also how the officers tell if you're paid. They check your license plate in the garage. So if you did not prepay, your license plate is not going to come up that you're paid. The garage is head-in only parking, and that is so the officers can see your plates. The vehicles also have cameras that can check those plates as well. So you do need to head-in park in the garage and stay within those lines that are painted. That is so that we can make sure that we're not taking extra space, that, you know, there's more availability if we're parking in the spaces. So you can be ticketed if you are not parked in the space. And then as far as, I've been getting a lot of bus questions for parking. And those, a bus can park on the street and pay the meters. They can also pay on the app. They can reserve the meters according to our ordinances for certain reasons. So as long as there's a pilot program right now as well for restaurants. So as long as it falls within one of those reasons, you can reserve bags for buses. You would just need to, you can do that on our website. You can call me, we can invoice you, things like that. Any of the information too, almost all of our information is on our website at gettysburgpa.gov. You just click parking. You can find questions there, and the locations to the app are on there. And all of my contact information is there if you ever have any questions, and I can answer any questions for you.
Is there any availability to do monthly spots at the parking garage?
Yes.
If I wanted to do 3 spots for the month, but for my employees, so it might be different license plates at different times. How would that be?
So we have had a few businesses, and some of them in here actually, that have taken that opportunity. There is monthly parking in the garage, so you can do a spot for $60 a month. Now that is only going to be for one car, and it's not a reserved space. It's a first come, first serve. There's also a reserved option. So that is $85 a month, and that is reserved for only you. The system will allow us to take 5 plates, no more than 5 per space. And then you are designated, let's say, space 320. So if you have 2 employees, you need to kind of arrange that because they cannot be parked in any other space other than that space. So that is an option that you can have up to 5 vehicles for the $85 for the month. The month always starts on the first of the month, ends the end of the month. And you can do that on our website as well.
Okay, and then like if there's an employee terminates and we get a different one, we can swap out license plate numbers?
Yep, just give me a call, shoot me an email.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes.
Are you guys planning to build another parking garage? Or whatever happened to the planned parking garage on like Washington Street?
I do not have that answer.
That was a borough project or a private project that.
I think that was a combined, but right now I don't have any additional parking other than the one garage that we have. Anything else? No?
I have a question. How can businesses get these for visitors to have at their front desk?
I'm working with the pay-by-phone site right now to try to get a copy of it. I just kind of made these copies, but.
My question was, how do we get these to you guys to have at your front desk, your hotel, so the visitors know how to do this? And it sounds like you're working on that.
Yeah, I can get it for you if you just
Perfect. So if anybody
contact me.
wants that, yeah, that'd
It
be
should be
great.
a printable, like a PDF version that I'm gonna get from them.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Becca. Now, of course, we're going to bring up Warren Bladen, who's been talked about quite a bit today, the Director of Emergency Services for Adams County, representing 911.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Warren Bladen. I'm the Director of Emergency Services for Adams County. I've been in this role for about 7 years. Absolutely love my job. Amy asked me to come here today and talk about the Department of Emergency Services. And I'm going to tell you up front, I love to talk. So when you ask me to talk about this topic, I can go on and on for hours. But I will keep it brief today. Number one, we need to get back on schedule. We're kind of off schedule here, see. And number two, I know that EMS is up next. And I don't want to take any time away from them because they have some very important information to pass along to you. So I'm going to talk like an auctioneer so I get through all of my information quickly. The Department of Emergency Services, let's talk about what it is. Basically, I manage 3 disciplines for the county. The first discipline is the 911 center. That probably consumes most of my time. The second discipline is emergency management, preparing for and responding to disasters. And then the final discipline is hazardous materials response. So I'm going to touch on all 3 of those, but I'm going to focus on 911 because I get the vibe that that's what you want to hear about here today. I don't call it a 911 center or a dispatch center. I call it PSAP, the Public Safety Answering Point, because that's the official name for it. When you look at state documents or federal documents talking about a 911 center, they're calling it the PSAP. So Adams County has their own PSAP. By law, every county in the Commonwealth has to have a PSAP. It doesn't mean they have to have their own PSAP, though. So there are some counties within the Commonwealth that have partnered with other counties to create a regional PSAP or dispatch center. But we have our own here in Adams County. And what do we do there? Well, we're dispatching, but what are we dispatching? We're receiving phone calls, requests for service, and who are we passing that information along to? Well, we dispatch law enforcement. And you met some of those people here today. The chief from Gettysburg and the Park Service. There are law enforcement agencies that we dispatch. We dispatch every local law enforcement agency. We do not dispatch the state police. So when you pick up your phone and you call 911 and we determine that it's really a request for law enforcement, the first thing we want to know is, where are you? What's your location? We want to know your exact location, including what borough or township you're in. And then once we know what borough or township we're in, we know whether or not we're going to be able to process this law enforcement call, or are we going to send the call over to the state police, to their dispatchers. So that's why it's so important for you to be familiar with where you are and give us all the step in processing that call for law enforcement. But it's also very important for processing a call for EMS, because we're also dispatching all of the EMS agencies in the county. So it's very important you know where you are. And that kind of seems really like, duh, I know where I am. Well, often people don't know where they are. They don't know what township or borough they're in or what street they're on. So, but you need to be prepared to give us as much information as you can about your location. And someone mentioned earlier, I think it was the chief, that, make sure your employees know your address of your business. Because I'm sure there are employees out there that don't know the address to the business they're working in right now. Wherever they're standing right now, they don't know the address, okay? It might even be a good idea to put the address maybe inside your storefront, above the door, put that address, because your customers aren't going to know your address, and if something happens, they could look up and see that address when they call for 911, because maybe your employee can't make the call for whatever reason. Maybe the employee's having a medical emergency, and a patron needs to call. So, getting back to what we're doing out at the 911 center, obviously we're a 24/7 operation. And our dispatchers work 12-hour shifts, and they don't get a lunch break, they don't get a dinner break. They work through their whole shift. As time permits, they'll step out of the room to use the restroom or to prepare their meal and bring it back in. They eat at their consoles. So they're sitting there at their desk, if you will, having their meals, just so they can pick up the phone when needed, and they can answer the radio when law enforcement calls in requesting something. We have 22 full-time spots in the 911 center. We are not fully staffed today. All right, we have 22 full-time spots. We have 8 part-time dispatchers. We're currently down 3 dispatchers. I'm looking to hire 3 more. that number's a little bit misleading because you think, oh, 22 minus 3, Warren's numbers are pretty good. Because I'm going to be honest with you, across our country, it's a challenge to staff 911 centers. It's almost to a crisis. Our neighboring counties are not fully staffed. If we look south of the Mason-Dixon, they're not fully staffed. So that's a challenge we face right now. I'm working hard with Human Resources, County Human Resources, and with the county commissioners. We're doing everything we can to move forward and get those spots filled. Like I said, I'm only down 3 spots, but I have 3 people who are in training. And it takes 9 months to train those people. So I'm actually down 6 people currently. And my dispatchers, my telecommunicators is the official title, they're working a lot of overtime to pick up the slack and keep things running out there. And I appreciate them. They're the first of the first responders. Because when you pick up that phone and call 911, they're on the other end and they're going to pick up your call. So what happens when you do call them? What are they going to do? Well, first of all, you're going to find out that they ask a lot of questions. And a lot of people get frustrated because they ask so many darn questions. Don't ask me questions, just send what I need. Okay? Well, it's a two-way street. You've got to work with us a little bit. Number one, we need to determine exactly what you need, and we need to determine where we need to send that resource. So when you call 911, a call taker is going to answer the phone. And when it first picks up, it's a recording identifying who it is and their dispatcher number. And then they're going to ask you what problem is, and they're going to ask you your location. And again, it's so important that we get that information early in the call. That's the first thing we want to know is where are you? Because if we lose telephone contact right after you give us the location, at least we know where you are. At least we know someone needs help. We don't know what they need, but we know where they are. So we can send someone to go find out. That someone is typically law enforcement. So we turn to law enforcement and say, hey, you need to respond to this location, assess what's going on, and get back to us. In the meantime, we're still trying to call that person back. Typically we get the phone number through our computer system, but if we don't, we're always asking the caller, what's your number? What's your callback number? That's very important, again, in case we get disconnected. We're also confirming that the information we're seeing on our screen is accurate. Yes, we do get information about your location. Yes, we get information about your phone number, but we always want to confirm everything to make sure it's accurate. We then want to determine what the nature of your emergency is. And once we do that, we have certain protocols that we have to go to. And this is where all the questions come into play. All right, and some of the questions seem ridiculous, but there's a purpose behind all of these questions. First of all, we don't have the discretion as to whether or not we're going to follow the protocols. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has told us, your PSAP, your 911 center will use these protocols. It's not optional, you will do it. And if we find that you're not doing it, we're going to call you out in a bad way. And what I mean by that is we could lose funding from the Commonwealth for our 911 center. So we have to use the protocols. So if my dispatchers decide, I'm going to let it slide, I'm not going to ask all these questions this evening, I think they're silly, I'm not going to ask them, well, then they're going to meet with me because that's a problem. We need to ask those questions. I want to reassure everyone in this room, when we're asking the questions, I don't want you to have the impression that we're holding your call until you answer all of these questions and then we're sending help, because that is not the case. Because you've got one dispatcher, one telecommunicator on the phone with you asking those questions, guess what someone else in the room is doing? Dispatching the resource, getting them on the street as quickly as we can. So as we continue to gather information, we're passing that information along, often to the EMS providers. We're telling them more information about the patient as they're responding. We try to get everything we can so they know what they're walking into when they arrive on the scene. For law enforcement, we want to know, are there weapons involved? Is there alcohol involved? Things of that nature. So that way that police officer knows what he could be walking in on when he arrives on the scene. So be patient with the dispatchers, be understanding, answer the questions to the best of your ability. If you find yourself saying, I don't know, frequently as they ask us questions, it's okay, don't get flustered. We recognize there are times you may not know, all right? But still, go through the questions with the dispatcher. If it's an EMS call, it might arrive at a point where they begin to give you directions on how to help someone until EMS arrives. Okay, so that's why we're asking those questions, so we know what directions to give you to help. We talked a lot about the non-emergency number that they kept putting up there, 334-8101. We call that our 10-digit number, 717-334-8101. It's okay to call that number. But if you're on the fence debating, should I call 911 or should I call that 10-digit number, call 911. All right, don't be afraid to call 911. I can't stress that enough. I'm glad that everyone else was pushing that message as well. Do not be afraid to call us. If you call us and it's not an emergency, it's okay. All right? The police chief spoke about, under the crimes code, there's a certain statute that allows people to be prosecuted for abusing 911. Okay? If you call and it's not an emergency, that's not what that statute is all about. Okay? That statute is all about people who abuse 911. And it is very rare that anyone is prosecuted for abusing 911. But if you mistakenly call for an incident that's not an emergency, that's not when that comes into play. No one's going to prosecute you. We're going to work with you, okay? But if you're in doubt, err on the side of caution and call 911. It's okay to do that. Also, we do have text to 911 here in the county. We have yet to receive a call for service from a text. A couple years ago, I had been doing a lot of reading about text 911, and I thought it's something we need here in the county. It's important. Why? Well, some people may not be able to speak for whatever reason, for maybe a medical problem, they can't speak. Also, it might be a situation that you're in that you can't speak, but you could still text on your phone to get help. So I'm like, we need text 911. So I start doing the research because I'm going to go to the county commissioners and say, we need this, and by the way, I need money for this. So anytime you ask for money from the county commissioners, you better, do some research, do some homework, and let them know how this is going to impact the citizens of Adams County. So I did this research, and I couldn't find numbers that really justified the expense. And I'm like, even like I read an article about Houston, how they put this in place and how much it cost them, and they're not getting calls for service hardly on it. And I went to the commissioners and I said, you can't look at it as, we're going to spend this money for this number of calls. We just can't do that, okay? But it's something we need because we have a very small population who can't speak, can't call 911, or the rare instance where someone is maybe in a situation where they can't call but they can text. And the commissioners agreed, so they funded it, and we've put it in place. We haven't used it a lot, I will admit that, but it needs to be in place. We need to have it. So we do. Going back to talking about abusing 911, we have had one person who decided to abuse 911 through the text, sending inappropriate text messages to us, but that was resolved rather quickly. I think that person was educated by law enforcement that, hey, this is your one pass, knock it off. So,
Is it just 911 or just star 911?
just 911.
I think that particularly in domestic violence situations or home invasions, I think if people knew that was connected in here, because if someone has broken into your house and you don't want them to hear you speaking, but you happen to have your phone.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm thinking when we got it.
Save somebody's life, and so it's worth, saves one life, it's worth the cost.
Right. So it's there. And we've worked with the newspaper to get the word out, but every time I do public speaking, I like to remind everyone, you can text 911. It works. I was texting last week just to make sure it was still functioning, because we don't get the calls. Did you have a comment or a question?
No, I was just saying we'll help tell others, because
Yeah.
I feel like that's a really awesome resource. Especially for women.
Can they get your location if someone texts 911?
There are things we can do to locate you, yes. Okay, but still, it would be easier if you knew where you were and you texted the location to us.
Right, but even if someone is a really bad kidnapper and they take you, but don't take your phone.
Right.
I mean, it could happen.
So, so we talked about text 911. We talked about that non-emergency number. It's 717-334-8101. Write that down, because there have been occasions, not just in Adams County, Commonwealth-wide, nationwide, where the 911 phone system goes down. It's beyond my control. I'm at the mercy of the phone company. It has happened that our 911 phones have gone down in Adams County. So what do we do at that point? Well, we put the word out about the 7-digit number. So it would be a good idea for you to put that in your phone somewhere and have that 7-digit number. So if you try to call 911 and it doesn't work, go over to the it's 10-digit now. I keep saying 7 because I'm old, okay? Now we have to have the area code. But that 10-digit number in your phone, You know, what do we do if the 911 phone system goes down? Well, typically it happens at nighttime for some reason. And that means I have to get out of bed, come to work, and I typically work with local media like Channel 8, 27, 21, and they put the crawler across the screen that our phones are down, call this number. We have agreements with other counties. One occasion I had to wake the director in York County, say, Matt, this is what's going on in my center, this is what I need, can the phone calls go to your? So we had to work that out. But the point of that little story is we have great cooperation with other counties. For example, if we get a storm and we're getting hit with 911 calls at our center and we just can't pick them up fast enough, it's way more than we can handle at once, they actually do a rollover and the phone calls start going to Franklin County. And you won't even know that you're calling in as Franklin County. They pick up the call, get the information, and send it back to us. So, and we do the same for them. Actually, when storms come, typically our storms come from the west. They come across Franklin County. We start to get their rollover calls. So we know storm's coming here, get ready. So, and if it makes it across the mountain, often they break up when they hit the mountain, but if it makes it across, then they're returning the favor and they're picking up our extra calls on that side of the mountain. So we have all kinds of redundancies and backup plans. I won't go into all of them, but we're always thinking worst case scenario, what can we do? Emergency management, I'll be real brief because we're running short on time. Emergency management is preparing for and responding to disasters. When I took the job, I thought, what am I going to have to deal with in that regard? Maybe some flooding, maybe a tornado, typically weather-related stuff. I had no idea a pandemic was coming. And COVID arrived, and it was a challenge. We were fortunate. We partnered with WellSpan, set up a vaccination clinic. They were great partners. I can't thank them enough. And I think we did a pretty bang-up job. I think we did a pretty good job of responding to the pandemic. Hazmat, if you have a hazardous materials incident, you call 911, all right? The first people you're going to see are going to be your local fire service. They're going to come out. They're going to function at what we call the operations level. They're going to assess the situation. Maybe they can resolve it. If they can't and they need a hazmat team, they reach out to us. Adams County does not have its own hazmat team. Really can't justify it. It's expensive to have a team. The number of calls that are hazmat in the county are minimal. So we contract with York County. So that resource would come from there. So that's how that works. Everybody should have my business card. I put one out at every place setting. If anyone would like a tour of the 911 center, the PSAP, send me an email. We do tours all the time. I like to do the tours. So like I said, I like to talk. Any questions? Chief.
So could you just real quickly cover, I think you skirted over it well, but if you mistakenly dial 911, what you should do, hang up right away, or should you?
No, stay on the line. Thank you. Good point. Yeah, if you accidentally, we'll call it butt dialing. If you butt dial 911, don't panic. It's okay. It happens every day. Stay on the line if you can. Wait for the dispatcher to pick up. Say, I'm sorry, it was an accidental dial. They're like, no problem. They might ask you for some basic information, your name, your phone number, and that's it. Just to put it into the computer-aided dispatch software, CAD. You're not getting in trouble. That's not why they're taking your name. It's just a normal practice. So if you accidentally dial 911 and then you hang up, if we got that number, we're calling you back. Please pick up. Don't ignore our call back. Just pick up, say, it was accidental, I'm sorry. No worries. We'll get that basic information and move on.
So if, like, someone's in distress and they call and hang up early, and then they don't answer your call back, does that prompt them to get checked on? Or?
Typically, in most situations, a welfare check is initiated.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
See us.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that could be a good
Yeah,
thing. Like, if you're not, particularly domestic violence, if you can't be saying, hey, it's a really bad day at my house, you know what I mean? But that's a way to summon the assistance.
But it absolutely is. And if you don't make contact with Warren's folks and they can't get back in touch with you, they always do the welfare check and they just send us or whatever particular police agency that's in that area.
Right. So it could be the state police or, yes.
When you're texting 911, how does the dynamic within the communication change? Like, can I send my live location still are you still asking a lot of questions that I then have to text back? Like,
We will be asking questions, probably not as many, because it's a little more time consuming. Until we got through all the questions, the resource would be on the scene. Okay? Often, my dispatchers can hear law enforcement get on the scene. And they will tell you, you know, the officer just called on location. You should be seeing that officer momentarily, or I can hear the officer in the background. And that's when they'll end the call with you, okay? They don't always stay on the line with you, depending on the situation. The dispatcher may elect to stay on the line with you the whole time until the resource gets there. If it's what they perceive as minor, it's, you know, we deal with a lot of very serious situations. I know to you, it's the worst day of your life, whatever's going on, it's absolutely terrible, but sometimes we need to move on to serve others. So they will get the information, ask the questions, process the call, and move on to the next call. But there are times when they're like, yeah, I'm not going to the next call. I'm going to stay on this call for whatever reason. Maybe it's a 9-year-old who's calling in because mom's unresponsive, something of that nature. I need to stay on this call. So, and we allow them that freedom of judgment. So, anything else? Okay. Oh.
Thank you so much.
From the business side, I reiterated before, for cell phone usage on 911 call, although they're out in the battlefield or something like that, approximately what is your location of how close you can take that call?
It really varies depending on the cell phone carrier. There's no one hard and fast answer to that question, unfortunately. We have SOS is one of the software that we use to locate cell phones. You know, you see on television where they triangulate and, you know, solve crimes in crime detective shows on television. It doesn't work that quickly. Sometimes it takes a good amount of time to get that information. So don't rely on that. It's really important to communicate with us.
Thank you so much. Any other questions?
I'd just like to point out one other thing too that Mr. Blake does for us is he's our point of contact for what I call outside resources or things from mutual aid departments and what they call the all hazards task force. So if we need some resources from PEMA, which is Pennsylvania Emergency Management, we'll go through Mr. Blake's office and he will facilitate us getting all those resources. So he is a very crucial function for all the emergency services.
Thank you. And we've talked a lot about 911, so thank you so much. And I just want to really quickly thank everyone who's been here so far. Before we introduce the EMS, thank you. We will continue to have questions, and I know we're going to go past time. There will be some live demonstrations with EMS and the fire if you want to stay a little bit later. But again, thank you for being here. Thank all of our speakers today as well. So I'm going to first introduce the Deputy Chief of Adams Regional EMS, Trent Summers. And we also have with us today in the back, Chief of Adams Regional EMS, and that is Brian Wheeler. And they will be doing live demo.
Hello, everyone. So Adams Regional serves a large majority of Adams County for emergency medical services. We have about just under 10,000 calls for service a year, which is quite busy for the amount of units that we have. Today we are going to go over a couple things that are very time dependent that people in the community can make a large difference in. Those would be gross or massive amounts of bleeding that can help with that. And then we'll also go over CPR. And Brian there's a class that anyone can take. They're held all the time, everywhere. That would be Stop the Bleed. Teaches you about tourniquet application and using pressure to stop bleeding. So our kids, it doesn't look like a full leg or a full arm, but it at least gets the point across of what we're trying to do. So our crews and our paramedics and EMTs, they get a little more in depth, and we will sometimes pack wounds, and we will cover them and put fancy pressure devices on them. But something that everyone should have and everyone every business, in my opinion, should have is tourniquets. They can be used on arms, legs, and they truly do save lives. Every police officer carries one. The fire department has them. All of our units have them. Some of our providers carry them on their person. If you were to need to use one, nothing that we're going to talk about today is fun. You put it on and you turn you turn this and you put it on very tight. It's going to be very painful for the people that are getting it placed on them. They're going to tell you to stop. Unfortunately, I usually say, sorry, if you want to live, we're going to continue to do this. And we turn it on tight until we can't feel a pulse in that extremity. And then we know that no blood is getting to that wound. We tell people to put it as far away from the wound and as high as they can. So if I have a cut down here that is bleeding and it seems arterial, so you would see spurting blood from the pulsation, then I would still put it all the way up here. And we try to teach folks to do that. If we hold this up, you can tell that it's squeezing down. There's a divot in this mannequin, and it just shows the pressure that's required to actually stop bleeding on someone. These are super simple, easy to use, and this is kind of the quicker one. So the CPR demonstration, we can do it in the back at the end, or if someone would like hands-on and just a quick rundown of how to do it. Amy and I are going to talk about how to get CPR classes for you folks, if that's something that someone would want to do. And we can go more in depth. Today in the back or up here, we're just going to go over hands-only CPR. The majority of businesses don't necessarily carry your barrier devices. And the most important thing is compression and getting the heart going. Breathing for someone is something that we will do when we get there. But the most important thing when a cardiac arrest happens is just CPR only. A couple things: if someone is complaining of chest pain, if they are pale, if they're very sweaty, complaining of arm pain, that could be indications of a heart attack, which most likely will lead to the person going into cardiac arrest. Identifications of that would be that they do not have a pulse and that they are not breathing. So Brian has the mannequin out, and we can just do a quick demonstration of CPR. You're going to put the hands in the just above in the sternum, just above the diaphragm, right where the heart would be located. You're going to do compressions at 100 beats per minute. There are playlists on Spotify, Apple Music for CPR playlists. Just need a song that's 100 beats per minute. That can be Staying Alive, Eye of the Tiger.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, I don't know any Taylor Swift songs.
There is one though. There is one that's approved.
Yeah, there is.
She's like a 60.
Bye 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 by NSYNC is also 100 beats per minute.
Whoa.
Yeah, Bye Bye Bye. Yeah, Staying Alive, you gotta give them hope. So with CPR, so hand placement is very important again.
So it's just nipple line.
Yeah.
Where the nipple line should be. One hand over top of the other.
You want to go 2 inches in depth. Yeah, the heel of your hand. And you want to allow time for the chest to recoil without going too far in depth. We just want the heart to refill with blood, and then we compress to get the blood mainly to the brain is what we're worried about. So it seems people find it intimidating. Everybody gets scared of either hurting someone. I would rather them be hurt, maybe have a broken rib or two, than be dead. So these are things that we need to think about. Brian has a AED and is going to go over some of the training with that.
Yeah, so just a couple of, does anybody have AEDs in their offices? So these are a big deal. This is the first, right? This is the first, the best chance.
What's the cost of them now?
About $2,700 for this. This is the latest and greatest.
Is there anything out there that gives brands?
I don't. Wellspan got out of the business of doing AED. They had a bunch in the county that they supported. In the last couple of months, they kind of got out of that program. Look, you can get an AED for cheaper. When people ask us what to buy, we go with these because we're familiar with these. We can support these. We can get them at a discounted rate for people that are looking for them. And these are super, super simple. If you've never operated one of these, it talks to you. It's going to start talking now.
Adult mode.
It's
remove all clothing from patient's chest.
You can't do this wrong. These ones.
Pull red handle to reveal pads.
Previous versions of this required 2 sets of pads.
Child mode.
Now it's a button push.
Look at pictures
so
on
the energy is regulated through the machine, not through the pad. So if I put this on a kid, we push the kid button. We put it on adult, it defaults to adult mode. There's pictures, it walks you through it. Remember, an AED, it won't shock somebody who's doesn't need a shock. It also will not shock somebody who is completely, it needs to see electrical activity in the heart in order to identify that it's attached to a patient, and it will deliver that shock. If you have an AED for somebody who's unconscious, put the AED on them. Because if they don't need it now, they may need it soon. If you have it applied properly, when we get there, we're going to use what you have done and attach it to our machine. That's the other nice thing about these physio control units is our parts are interchangeable. So if you've got it applied and maybe you've delivered a shock or haven't yet, we can plug these pads into our machine and we can pick up where you guys left off. They're super, super important. So a couple of things, yes and no. Don't let so these pads.
Adult mode. Remove all clothing from
Sorry, I'm just going to close that so it's not yapping. As long as the jewelry's not underneath of this pad, don't worry about taking necklaces off and all that stuff. Medication patches are another thing, right? We need to get the medication patch off and wipe that area clean, but don't worry about moving as long as you're not directly over it.
And you don't have to have that on your skin?
No, you do, absolutely.
You do.
This is a naked person scenario, yeah.
I thought they were saying to remove clothing.
Yeah, we're going to cut them off, apply directly to the skin, and just avoid, again, typically a pacemaker is over here, so it's not in your way. If for some reason you get all crossed up, just don't go over top of it. And then there'll be another one down here. And once you get these pads applied,
adult mode.
The machine will see it.
Remove all clothing.
And go into another mode. Stand clear, I want to take a look, don't be doing CPR and things like that. This is a class that we offer, an AED class, a CPR class, first aid class. arems.net is probably the best way to shoot a message over to the website, and we can help facilitate trainings if you want, whether it's a certification class or just a gee whiz, I'd like to know that class.
How expensive are they?
Depends. If you don't want a card, like if you don't want to be a member of the club and have a card in your pocket, there's no charge.
Okay, so like just for familiar.
You just want to, exactly. Just kind of, do the simple stuff. If you want the full-blown class, we do charge for cards because we pay for cards. Excuse me. It's typically not expensive, probably less than $20 a person, depending upon there's different certification levels, and of course the people we buy the cards from, the more initials you have after your name, the more you pay. So
if you have somebody who's a suspected cardiac collapse and you have an AED, you use that first, you don't start the CPR or anything, is that correct?
ideally, we're going to tell you, call 911, get an AED, address the patient. If you're in the middle of the battlefield, you're going to start CPR. A couple of things with CPR. Somebody who took advantage of the chief's calm space at the cemetery to take a nap, if you start doing CPR on them, they're going to wake up, so you won't need the AED at that point. But CPR won't kill people. An AED won't kill people. So if we run through a quick assessment, say it doesn't look like they're breathing, and I don't feel a pulse, CPR.
And it's funny, because years ago, like, you know, first aid classes, it was like 15 breaths and then.
Yeah, breathing, yeah. And now it's all about, now they're focusing more on hands off time, right? They don't want hands off of these compressions for more than 10 seconds. You know, even if we're actually doing a full assessment on somebody, trying to assess their breathing and their pulse, we don't spend more than 10 seconds doing it. Go right.
Is there an easy way to figure out that I've never been able to really find a pulse?
So yeah, it's tricky, right? And if you're dealing with somebody in this state, the only pulse that you should probably be trying to palpate is the carotid pulse. Look, don't use the thumb, don't push real hard, but you're right. 9 times out of 10, somebody who doesn't do this every day is going to not feel it. Because adrenaline's going to have you, you're going to include it. Yes, ma'am.
So, a defibrillator is that?
This,
AED?
yeah, automatic.
Same thing now.
Yeah, so this is an
Adult
automatic, AED is automatic external defibrillator. Same, exact same thing. These are, look, these gained popularity, right? The DeMar Hamlin thing, our friend from Adams Electric out at the hotel. When they make the news, everybody, yeah. So we've placed probably 20 or so of these in the last year. So they are really, the police cars all have them. So they're really, there's a lot of them in the county. Questions on that stuff? If you want to do some, go ahead.
It said to strip them of all clothing?
Yes.
Really, all clothing?
Well, yeah. we're gonna bear from the waist up, but through our assessment process, you're gonna be naked. Maybe not right now. Yeah.
The bigger thing, just one, do with pad placement, and then 2 with the wire would be females if they're wearing a bra to remove that or cut it. That is. You don't need to worry about that.
Yeah, we're not gonna.
I mean, honestly, modesty with it.
Right.
Yep.
And if we have an opportunity, we're going to do
Adult mode.
Yeah. You can
Remove
put
all
one
clothing
if
from
somebody
patient's
isn't great
chest.
with getting on the ground. We can put one on the sleeves that should be a
Pull
decent
red
height
handle
before we
to
put
reveal
them on the
pads.
ground.
Look at pictures on pads.
Is that everything?
Yep. Nope. That's everything from us.
Again, I want to thank everyone who stayed for this presentation. There will be live demonstrations if you want to come up and try this. Also, too, I think it's really valuable. I will get out to you how we can get together, get certified for these types of things, and I'll make sure everyone has that as well. So again, thank you everyone who stayed. Thank you for our presenters. Thank you to community media who live streamed this, and then it will be available at Destination Gettysburg and communitymedia.net as well. So thank you again, and grab some snacks on the way out.